Three, two, one.
When did we start believing that every free moment has to be used to become something? What if sometimes becoming requires us to simply be? Let me explain. I had plans for my vacation. Oh, I had plans. I thought I was going to have all this free time. I was going to work on my podcast. I was going to create. I was going to take all these ideas that I have had been living inside my head and finally bring them to life. I was going to get ahead. I was going to do some TikToks. I was going to do some pretty much a lot of creating. And then for the first couple days, I kind of did. I painted. I did some TikToks. I did some lives. We worked on some remodeling. I still had that little productive part of my brain going. And then somewhere around day 3, I stopped. Not because something was wrong, but because for the first time in a while, I didn't feel like I needed to do anything. I was a partner, I was a mom, I was a grandma, and yes, I pretty much stole my granddaughter for the entire week. There was no deadline, no content calendar, no episodes I needed to finish, no dreams I needed to chase, and no something happened that I wasn't expecting. I was simply living. And maybe I needed that more than I needed another productive week. Because if I'm being completely honest here, I was finally living to live and not to survive. And that's such a beautiful feeling and the experience that was well overdue. Welcome back, my beautiful souls, to Becoming with Erika, a place where we heal out loud, grow through what tried to break us, and become everything God created us to be. And if this is your first time listening in, welcome. I am so grateful you are here. I don't believe that things happen by accident. What I do believe is there's a purpose and reason for everything and you're not here by mistake. So let's dive right into it. This episode speaks loud to my soul, for it has been what I lived this whole vacation week that I just had. And if you missed me, I missed you too. For someone who's spent a long time in survival mode, slowing down can actually feel unfamiliar. You get used to there always being something to solve, something to accomplish, someone to take care of, some next thing to prepare for. And even when life starts changing, the brain can still keep operating like it needs to stay busy. So when you finally experience several days where there was nothing you had to accomplish and you allowed yourself to stay there, what felt like wasting my vacation was liberating. I was experiencing something my nervous system may not always associate with everyday's life. Nothing is required of me in this moment. I can just be here. And maybe I needed that more than I needed another productive week. Because if I'm being completely honest here, I think for the first time, I mean, for the very first time that my mind can remember in a really long time, I was living to live and not living to survive. I mean, isn't that crazy? Most of us who are on survival mode, we don't live to live, we live to survive. And I didn't realize how different those two things felt until I experienced it. I wasn't trying to get through something. I wasn't preparing for what might happen next. I wasn't chasing the next goal. I wasn't thinking about who I was becoming. I was just Erica, a partner, a mom, a grandma, a woman enjoying life. And that was such a beautiful feeling. I mean, when I say it was such a beautiful feeling, I mean every single ounce of that was such a beautiful feeling. It was one of those days I didn't realize that was overdue, which got me thinking, when was the last time you lived your life without trying to accomplish something with it? Because wow, I felt amazing and ready to return to lifing in a whole new outlook in life. I thought I needed time away so I could work on my dreams. Instead, I discovered that one of the things I've been working so hard for was already happening around me. And remember when I said sometimes we need to provide evidence to our brains? Which for me, it was that it's okay to live just to live and not to survive. Well, my beautiful souls, I think that's exactly what I was doing all week without even realizing it. I was giving my brain new evidence, evidence that I can wake up without immediately worrying about what needs to get done, evidence that I can sit with my family and not thinking about the next thing on my schedule. Evidence that I can play with my granddaughter without feeling like there's something more productive I should be doing. Evidence that nothing bad happens when I stop for a minute. And maybe most importantly, evidence that peace can be safe too. Because here's where we're going to nerd out for a minute. Let's talk about the brain. When you spend a long time living in survival mode, your brain gets really good at surviving. And I mean, really, really good at it. Your brain is consistently learning from experience. It pays attention to your patterns. It asks in its own way, what has kept us safe before? If staying busy helped you survive, if planning ahead helped you avoid problems, if freaking out that you had to make a plan for the rest of the week helped you stay intact, if being responsible for everyone kept things from falling apart, if constantly thinking 3 steps ahead made life feel a little more predictable, your brain can learn this is what we do. And here's the important part: the pattern doesn't automatically disappear just because your circumstances change. Your brain learns through repetition. That's one of the incredible things our brain does. It learns through repetition. So sometimes we can leave the environment that required survival mode while still carrying the survival patterns with us. That's why we rest. That's why when we rest, we can sometimes feel uncomfortable. I personally, if I get a nap, maybe 15, 20, 30 minute in, God forbid it's an hour, I feel like I lost time. I could have been productive. I could have done an episode. I could have recorded. I could have cleaned. I could have washed. I could have started to think of all the things I could have. Can you relate to that? I mean, have you ever finally gotten a day where you have absolutely nothing to do and somehow you start looking for something? You start cleaning, checking your phone, thinking about work, making a list, planning next week, and you're sitting there thinking, why can't I just relax? Well, maybe your brain has had more practice doing than being. And that doesn't mean anything is wrong with you. It means your brain learned from the life you lived. But here's my favorite part. Your brain can continue learning, which brings me to neuroplasticity. You guys already know I love talking about this. Neuroplasticity is our brain ability to change and adapt through experience, which means every new experience gives our brain information. And sometimes healing isn't only sitting down and talking about everything that happened to us. Sometimes healing is experiencing something different. Maybe your brain learned, I always have to be prepared, and then it experiences, I can rest and I'm okay. Maybe your brain learned, if I'm not doing something, I'm falling behind. And then you experience, I can stop and my life doesn't fall apart. Maybe your brain learned my value comes from what I accomplished. And then you experience people loving you when you're producing absolutely nothing. That's evidence. And one peaceful afternoon probably isn't going to erase years of learned patterns. That's not how this works. But every time you experience safety differently, you're giving your brain another piece of information. We're saying, hey, look at this too. And that's what I realized my vacation gave me. I didn't come home with memories. I came home with evidence, evidence that this version of life exists, living to live. And there's something else I've been thinking about. I spend a lot of time talking about becoming. It's literally the name of my podcast, Becoming with Erica. We're healing, we're growing, we're changing habits, we're learning about our brains, we're chasing dreams, we're becoming who God created us to be. But then I realized something this week. I don't want us to become so obsessed with becoming that we forget to be. Because what exactly are we becoming for if we never allow ourselves to experience the life we're building? I want to build becoming empire. I want to speak. I want to teach. I want to create. I have dreams that scare me and excite me at the same time. I'm going to keep going after them. But I don't want to become so focused on building tomorrow that I completely miss today. Because this week, today, look like my granddaughter. Today look like family. Today look like laughing. Today look like waking up without an alarm telling me where I need to be. Today look like nothing, not knowing what time it was and honestly not caring. And none of those things moved one of my business goals forward, but they moved me. That's different. And then I thought about God because even biblically, rest was never an afterthought. Genesis tells us after after creation, God rested on the seventh day, not because God was exhausted and couldn't continue. There was intention in the rhythm, creation, work, and rest. And later, Jesus himself would withdraw from crowds and go to a quiet place to pray. Think about that. There was still people who needed him. There was still work that could have been done. There was still people waiting. And yet there were moments of withdrawal. That challenged something in me because sometimes I act like I'm allowed to rest only when everything is finished. But when exactly is everything finished? There is always another episode, another post, another email, another goal, another room to remodel, another bill, another dream, another person who's needs something. If I'm waiting until life says, okay, Erica, congratulations, everything is officially done, you may not rest. Girl, I'm going to be waiting forever. Maybe rest isn't something we earned after accomplishing life. Maybe rest is part of how we're supposed to live life, which here comes your self audit. So, I can't leave you without giving you something to think about. Sometime this week, ask yourself, when was the last time I allowed myself to simply exist without needing the moment to accomplish something? And then go a little deeper. When I rest, do I actually rest or do I feel guilty? Do I immediately reach for my phone? Do I start thinking about everything I should be doing? Do I believe that being productive makes me more valuable? Do I know how to experience peace without waiting for something to go wrong? And here's a big one. Am I building a beautiful life that I'm forgetting to actually live? Okay, that is worth repeating. Am I building a beautiful life that I am forgetting to actually live? Because maybe your next step in becoming isn't doing more. Maybe it isn't another book. Maybe it isn't another podcast, another routine, another goal. Maybe your next step is sitting outside for 30 minutes, playing with your kids, calling somebody you love, watching a movie without multitasking, taking that long way home, sitting quietly with God, or having absolutely no plans and resisting the urge to make some. Not because any of those things are productive, but because you're alive and your life deserves to be experienced. And take it from someone who lived on survival mode more than half her life. I went into my vacation thinking I had been given a week to create, and I did create something. just not what I expected. I created memories. I created new experiences. I created evidence for my brain that peace doesn't mean something bad. It's about to happen. I created evidence that I can stop without everything falling apart. And I created space to remember something I don't ever want to forget again. I'm not building a life just so I can spend my entire life building it. I want to live it. So, yes, keep chasing your dream, keep showing up, keep learning, keep becoming everything God created you to be. But every once in a while, just be. Be mom, be dad, be grandma, be grandpa, be a friend, be somebody's partner, be silly, be quiet, be present, be completely unproductive. Be the person who doesn't know what time it is before because I'm sorry. Be the person who doesn't know what time it is because for once it doesn't matter. And let me tell you, I not once cared about my phone. I lost it several times. Not worried about it, but I mean, I knew it was in the facility of where I was. I didn't know what time it was. I had no agenda that I had to stick to. And oh my God, that was amazing. And maybe when that little voice inside your head says, you should be doing something, you can answer, I am. I'm living. And maybe that's enough for today. Until next time, my beautiful soul, keep healing, keep growing, and keep becoming. But don't forget, sometimes becoming requires us to simply be. So go live to live. Thank you, and God bless.